response to Gary about population control, just thinking about this voucher scheme system that you mentioned there, Gary. I haven't seen your back videos on this one, so you probably talked about it in more detail. But yeah, I mean, the problem I have with the voucher scheme is the same problem I have with the other things I mentioned in terms of financial incentives, is that my fear would be that vouchers would become a form of currency. Yes, you get a voucher to replace you in this world, so notionally every couple has 2 vouchers, therefore can bring 2 kids. But if you don't want to have kids, you can give your voucher to someone else. But as I say, it would become currency, and as soon as it becomes currency, then I think it becomes part of a system that I'd really not like to get its dirty hands on reproduction, really. I think it would be fine, because, obviously, if it becomes currency, then only the rich can have more than 2 children. So more children becomes a symbol of esteem and prestige. You become Duncan Bannatyne and all those people who insist on having more children than is absolutely necessary just because it's a kind of status symbol, and it would become more of a status symbol for sure, I think, if it was limited. So it would be fine, if it was the case that the best people get rich, but the fact is they don't. If it was the case that richness was a result of moral virtue, or of character, or of a willingness to contribute to the world in positive ways, a willingness to not be ruthless, a willingness to be compassionate, a willingness to be self-deprecating and help, any of those kind of things, that would be fine. But of course it isn't, unfortunately. And I'm not saying all rich people are horrible. I'm not saying that money is necessarily evil. But the fact is, a lot of rich people got rich because they exploited other people, or because they exploit natural resources, or they engage in fairly ruthless business practices, or they invest their money in companies and industries which in turn go on to exploit people. So yeah, I would hate to prop up a system like that anymore by linking it to reproductive rights, which I think a voucher scheme, if you weren't really careful, would do. Just on the vouchers, I think there are some good things about it, because a voucher, I mean, it makes it sound like a dinner ticket. Actually, when I was at school, I used to get dinner tickets. If you're a low-income family, you got free school meals when I was a kid, and these little green tickets. So you go up to the counter with these. So this is what I've got in mind, this little green dinner ticket. But yeah, I think if the voucher was given more kind of symbolic value, I know that psychology isn't your thing, Gary, and probably things like symbolic value mean nothing to you. But I think it would be important. We can rely on science and philosophy to generate the policies, but I think implementation would require a lot of psychology, and getting people to buy into the idea of vouchers for reproductive rights would require a lot of psychology. And one of those bits of psychology might be to give these vouchers some kind of symbolic value. So, for example, they might be imprinted with your genome, I'm thinking, because that is, I mean, it's symbolic, but it's also kind of real. You know what I mean? Only you have got your genome, and it is a unique stamp of your identity, which I know is completely irrelevant, and the uniqueness is so minuscule as to be almost irrelevant. But psychologically, I think that carries a lot of weight. I mean, it could even have a material instantiation. Your voucher is represented in physical form by a semen sample, or an egg sample that's lodged in some central archive. So your genome is quite literally instantiated somewhere in the world, so that after you die, your gene lives on in some weird way. I think it just provides a psychological hook that a lot of people would feel inclined towards. What else about these vouchers? Yeah, I mean, I think the international aspect is difficult. I mean, yeah, I know what you mean. If you made the whole prospect of small families attractive by showing lots of advertising, showing the happy and free and wealthy lifestyle of small familied couples in the West, then you might get people to buy into it. But I'm not absolutely sure. You might have to actually put other kinds of incentives in place. And I don't just mean for financial incentives, because they, as I say, those financial incentives are often, even though they're meant to be positive, are often felt as kind of punitive. So it feels like a tax on children, or it feels like a privilege that only the wealthy can afford, those kind of things. But there might be other kinds of incentives. For example, you might lower the immigration regulations for couples with small numbers of children. That might work. Come on, Pops, this way. Come on. Yeah, I don't know exactly how that works. Or some kind of sponsorship system. And you know, you could sponsor a newlywed couple to guarantee their security in the future if they don't have children, because children are often kind of built in as a substitute for social security, aren't they, in old age? So that might be some kind of sponsoring system. That might work. What else? Yeah, I mean, other things you could do. You could certainly replace conventional reproduction with reproductive technology. That'd be interesting. Don't think you get many takers for that idea. But if all reproduction was by test tube, that'd be a very different game, wouldn't it? Really, very controllable. And also this thing about this isn't directly related to anything you said, I don't think, Gary, but the kind of accidental nature of childbirth. It seems absurd to me that here in the 21st century, most children are kind of born by accident. You know, they're born because people didn't use contraception, or people just didn't think about it. You know, just didn't think about it. And I can understand it, you know, because the first few times I had sex years ago, I didn't think about childbirth. That wasn't in the cards at all. It certainly wasn't why I was doing it. And I think that's still the case for almost everyone, I would say. So a lot of children are born out of accidental couplings. Not just teenage pregnancies, but also, you know, even within marriage, that's usually the case. Most children aren't planned, and that's a scandal, really. The default setting should be that children are planned for, and financially planned for, and emotionally planned for, and all that kind of stuff. Not just wanted, and certainly not accidental. So the default setting should be for all, I would say, all sexual relationships to not lead to childbirth, which means that, you know, abortion on demand, of course, should be made more available and should be standard. You know, I would think you should be able to buy some kind of morning after pill over the counter in newsagents. It should be very standard practice for girls on the way to sixth form to stop into newsagents on the way to buy the abortifacient. You'd need to do something with the Roman Catholic Church, of course, but, you know, I can imagine that. Actually, to do it with the Roman Catholic Church, I think what you'd have to do is you would have to start selling them on the idea that God gave us free will. God gave us free will, so we would naturally be appalled that we don't use that free will intelligently in something as intelligent and important and significant as bringing the next generation into being. You know, God should be in horror about that. You should say, I didn't give you free will just so you could scatter your seed in each other's vaginas, left, right and centre, without any thinking about it. Do some thinking about it, you would say. So I would try and sell the Catholics on that God wants us to plan our childbirth because it's the wise and divine exercising of free will. And so abortion clinics would be places of worship almost, and places of sacramental abortions. Yeah, I can go along with that. Sacramental contraception, following God's will. So yeah, you could have to do that. Of course, you'd have to be reasonably tolerant, I think, unless you wanted to institute the police state, which I think would be a bad propaganda move. You would have to be tolerant, because of course there's going to be nutters out there, there's going to be religious nutters, there's going to be all kinds of groups out there who don't follow the logic of it, who don't go along with it, have 12 kids, bring their kids up to have 12 kids. Yeah, there'll be things like that. You know, and there would have to be a period of, it would be a bit like Westboro Baptist Church, I think. You know, Westboro Baptist Church holds views that were completely common a couple of hundred years ago, probably less than that. But now they're just nutters, and I think it would be the same with people who held on to the sacrament of natural reproduction and childbirth. Yeah, okay, there'd be quite a few of them to start with, but, you know, give it a few years. It certainly wouldn't be hundreds of years, I don't think. Just give it a few years and the right kinds of public relations exercises, and these people will be just seen as insane. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for these vouchers. Actually, the other thing with these vouchers, and this is a kind of science fiction imagining, so don't take it too seriously. What I'm imagining with this voucher is just to randomise the process a bit, because of course we do have all our individual genome, and we do maybe have this kind of psychological investment in our identity, which perhaps is worthy of just consideration in terms of winning over hearts and minds. But maybe there's a way of generalising that out. So these vouchers are not for individuals, they're for groups, small groups. So each voucher will be a bit like a Soggy Biscuit. I don't know if you know about Soggy Biscuit, Gary, but it's a game that is supposedly played in public schools in the UK. I've never been to public schools, so of course I've never played the game. But in Soggy Biscuit, it's a group of usually pubescent boys sit around a biscuit, like a digestive biscuit, and you jack off onto the biscuit. That's the idea. So the biscuit gets covered in sperm, and the person who jacks off the last, who comes last, has to eat the biscuit. Charming game. But yeah, the voucher could be kind of Soggy Biscuit voucher. So it hasn't just got your genome on it, it's got a bunch of other guys' genome on it, and maybe even women's genome on it, mixed together in some weird way. And so there's these collective vouchers which you can allocate. So rather than you just have to have less vouchers, you know what I mean? It'll bring the number of vouchers down a bit. And that's probably a bit too far out, isn't it, really? Yeah, okay, good topic. I'll see what else I can think of.